Hi friends, and welcome to my weekly stream about the Uno platform. I'm spending about an hour every week taking a look at the Uno platform news and issues and live coding all the things. My name is Jérôme Laban, and you can find me every week discussing all about Uno platform. And today we're going to take a look at continuing one of the issues that we were looking at last week, which is a ListView or items control memory leak. And it's been 2 weeks now. We found a few things last week with the help of the Visual Studio tooling, trying to find the root of all the issues, and we find actually one issue with the double-ended queue class that we're using inside of Uno, and we're going to be able to continue doing this and see where we can find that, and if we are able to find all the issues that we have, and try to get down to the root of all this, then we can go to another issue with resource dictionaries and events, which was supposed to be last week, but there was a lot of activity last week. That was nice. I see two of you already here. I see Darren. Hi, Darren, and Jose, which who's already has questions, which is good. Thank you. Well, actually, let's jump on that one already. So Jose is asking about the difference between profile-guided AOT and ready-to-run, being both having mixed IL and native. That's the question. So it really depends on the target. So ready-to-run and ready-to-run is a desktop version, or desktop mode feature in a sense. So ready-to-run basically pre-compiles parts of the app, and it's close to what NGen was with the .NET framework. So it basically takes parts of the IL and compiles that down to the CPU architecture that's available. So multiple, if any, but it doesn't compile everything. There are still stubs that are existing that need to be JITted. So it's not fully AOT'd. Profile guided AOT, it depends. I don't know if it wasn't added in .NET 7. I think it was, but I'm not too sure. So profile guided optimization. It's not really the same. So there's PGO, which is the support for optimization in the JIT, if I remember correctly. PGO. Let's see, dynamic PGO turned off by default. Oh, it's a JIT. Okay, so it's a jitting thing. So it optimizes the JIT engine so that it precompiles a set of methods for the scenarios that you pre-recorded. Now, profile guided AOT specifically, I think it's called startup tracing in Xamarin, but it's close but not exactly the same. For Uno, specifically on WebAssembly, profile guided AOT is when you're building an application with the profiler turned on, and what it does is record a set of features, records a set of invoked methods, and then generates a file that you can reuse to compile a second version of the app, which is optimized for this for your scenarios, because you're going to have had used the app in the proper in your context. So that's the idea. Now, if you go to runtime execution modes, and you can find profile guided AOT for WebAssembly specifically. So this is a feature specifically for WebAssembly, and that one will pre-generate WebAssembly code from IL code. Now, if we're talking about profile guided AOT on Android, that one is different, and it pre-generates ARM64 or x86 or things like that, depending on the target that's being used from IL. So it's different from the profile guided AOT in terms of what is generated, but the technique is the same. You record what's being used in the app and then generate native code, whichever it is, whether it's WebAssembly on one side or ARM64 or others for the other targets. So that's it. That's the explanation for profile guided AOT. There's probably a lot more that is available if you take a look at the documentation, but I hope that will help understanding what that is. Good. Okay, so let's go back to our profiling and determining if we actually have reduced our memory. So what we found out last time, and I think we have a profile that's still open that we can close. Probably not used here, so we're going to recreate all this. So the idea is that if you weren't there last week, is that we're starting the app, and when the app is available, when the app is running, when we add items here, we can see that the memory goes up, that one specifically. And then if we remove items, then the memory doesn't go down, or not significantly enough. And it's adding about 100 megabytes every edition. And we can see that even with the changes that I made last week, which is ensuring that materialized lines clear, it is actually clearing the memory, we can see that it's still there. So there's still something that holds up the items that are added to the list and doesn't clear the memory. So we're going to try to find out where that comes from. So now what we had last week was the fact that that clear here that clear method in the double-ended queue here was not clearing the buffer. So now we do clear the buffer. So we know that the double-ended queue is not holding the memory. So now we're going to try to find which part of the process is actually doing this. So let's go back to our performance profiler, and then we're going to find out if we can have something different this time. Because last time we stopped at the modification for the double-ended queue and saw that the memory was not going down. Now we're going to try to find out where that memory is held. So we do GC, see that it doesn't go down. We take a snapshot, and then we're gonna go and analyze the content of that memory to see if we get something interesting. So last time we saw that creating multiple heaps was crashing the profiler. Now this time we may not be having that issue. Let's hope so. So we can see that the item here is 400 megabytes, which is a lot, but it makes it easy to troubleshoot. And now we're going to try to find who's holding onto what. Okay, so we can see a few property change callbacks that are held here. So there's a cycle. That's probably another problem here. We have a dependency object store. So we can see that I clicked 4 times, and there are 4 times that block. So it may be that one of the items that are here are not collected properly. So we're going to try to find which one is doing this. Okay, so we can see that the grid is holding onto the item through a set of observables. And we can see that the grid is held here, but it's held by what? So the first interesting thing is that it's not supposed to stay hooked. And the reason for this may be that we're not clearing the contents of the templates properly. So we should be resetting the data context, and it looks like it's not for some reason. So we're going to try to find who's holding onto it. So we can see that the grid element is holding everything here. We can see the grid again. We had a ListView item that's available here. It's held into a stack of framework elements. Oh, okay, so there's another one here. Okay, so we have the virtualizing panel generator that's holding onto a ListView item that holds onto the rest. And for some reason, so we're going to go and take a look at where this item is stored. So it's stored in a stack, most likely to be reused. So we're going to be taking a look at the virtualizing panel generator. Where is that one going? Virtualizing panel generator. Here it is. And we have a stack somewhere. So we have a dictionary of stacks. Okay. So that one is recycled items container that can be reused as needed. Now, the interesting thing is that we're putting those set of items in there when the items are removed from the cache, from the displayed list of items. They're supposed to be emptied. So that's fine if we're keeping the items. That's not fine if we're discarding the containers. We're not clearing the containers properly. So what we can see here, let's try to find where we're recycling items. Okay, so we can see that we're recycling items here, and we're pushing items in the cache, so that's fine. Okay, let's see what we're doing with that. So let's start the app again and try to figure if we have something interesting here with the recycling. So I'm always amazed at taking a look at who's watching what at the current time, and sometimes I get a lot of people on YouTube, and sometimes I have a lot of people on Twitch, but I'm not sure why it migrates from one to the other, to be honest. For those of you that are here, what do you prefer? Do you prefer Twitch or do you prefer YouTube? Which and why? I'm interested. Okay, so it looks like my Visual Studio is not having a good time here. Probably going to be restarting it quickly. So, okay, we did not finalize startup. This is not useful. Okay. You switch to YouTube as a video quality is better. That's interesting. So I'm sending at 6 megabits per second. So that would mean that Twitch is reducing the quality for some reason. That's interesting. Okay. Okay, so I don't know when I started, but that's definitely what should have been started. Okay. Okay, so the app closed. Did it? No, it did not. Okay, so that's better. Okay. Let's try again. I started the other app. So for some reason, Visual Studio is just swapping the active window. I didn't notice that. So it actually tried to launch the samples app that's coming from the Uno solutions, not what I wanted. Okay, so I'm adding new items, and I'm going to be removing those items and see where they go. Okay, so for now it didn't go anywhere. Okay, so probably not the right one. Am I? I searched for the file in the wrong place, I think. Yep, I searched for the file in the wrong place. Okay, so what we want to go to is that file. So at line 179. Let's remove that one. Okay, 179. So we want to be recycling items. So if I add an item again, or actually could you remove that one? Okay, so removing the item and it gets recycled. So for that to happen, we have an update for collection changed. So we get the set of collection changes that were sent. And we have the items that were removed. So the scrap cache. Okay, so the scrap cache is likely to be the list of items that have been removed. That have been removed. Scrap view for item. Okay, so let's try to find who's adding something here. Okay, it's adding, we have a scrap line. Scrap line. Okay, that line is considered not useful. And materialized lines, scrap layout. So in there, when we're saying scrap layouts, that we've determined that the content is not useful anymore. So we should be removing the content. We should be removing the items from the view. Now, what's interesting is that the items that are specified in here, So the line that's available here should be going through a set of invocations that clear the content of the item. It looks like it's not doing it. So we have discard container. Okay, so let's go and figure something else. So in items control, we're supposed to be seeing a prepare item container for index. So this is called when an item is created. I'm going to see if we're going there. So when an item is created, we're supposed to be invoking that method on items control so that whoever's implementing this is able to set up the item. We can see here that we're setting, I think, the data context somewhere in there. So we're setting content, we're setting the content template, is the content template selector for each item that's added to the list. And we can see here that the prepare container for item override is invoked, which is good. Now there's a version of this that does the same thing, but the other way around. So when a container is removed from the list, it's supposed to be cleaned up. So now we're going to try to figure if that one is invoked the other way around. So I think it's clear container. I don't remember the name. Clear container for item override. So we're supposed to be going in that method. So are we going in that method? We're not. So that's one of the problems. So maybe we should be calling that method, but we're not. So that means that we can see that in the clear container for item override, we should be clearing the style. We should be clearing a few other things that are not at that level. Let me see. Maybe it is called, but maybe it's not overridden properly. So it could be something like that. So we're going to figure where this is supposed to be called. So we have a cleanup container. This one is called by local cleanup container for update items. That's one of the lists. It's called in multiple occasions. Okay, let's see if we go into that one. Okay, cleanup is invoked in multiple locations. That one we have. That one we have. That one is the same. Okay, so let's see if we get invoked for some of those additional methods. So we have the update items, which is called for okay, so it's update item. So we know that we're in the list view, so it may be the cause of the issue. So if we take a look at how the list view is handling this. So we have the prepare container for item override. If we remove the item, we get it to update items as well, but it's not doing anything. Okay, so we're not getting to any of the method that's supposed to be cleaning the content of the item. So that explains why we're keeping, instead of each item that's put in the list, we're keeping the data context and making a leak. So that's unless it's reused in a different item. So it's going to be overriding the data context. So it's going to be clearing the previous value, but that's not a good thing. So it takes a while to go down. So that's good. So we're going to try to figure why we're not invoking that clear method there. I see McNet says join. Welcome. Okay, so we have update items here. And we're going to try to determine why we're invoking the original one. So we're invoking the update updating the prepare container for item override in the at the dequeuing. So we can see here that we're invoking items control prepare item for container when we're creating an item. So in the dequeue view for item. And we're trying to get that from the scrapped index and things like that. So that should be the good thing for that. Now, we're supposed to be invoking that method somewhere in there as well. So we can see that we're back into the virtualizing panel generator. But that would mean that when we're putting the view back into the list, we should be clearing that item properly. So let's see, what do we have? We have the recycle view for item. And in here, we're not invoking anything. So maybe we should be invoking the items control clear container for index. So let's go and figure if we need to change this. So that means that we're going to have a new set of unit tests that are going to be there, because it means that we have a missing feature here where we're not clearing our content properly. So where is that? 179. Okay, so that was that line. Okay, so in here we're supposed to be clear container. No, it's not that one. Okay, so that's not good. If we go to the prepare item for container index, maybe there's another method for that one that I'm not seeing. Okay, so we're preparing the item. Okay, so it's a specialized method that does the preparation. So we need another one. It's probably the same method with the clear. And if it's not, we're going to have to add it. So we're supposed to be calling this one, but we don't have a version of container clear for item the same that we have for the other one. So if I go back to the prepare, so we have a container, we have an index, but we should be having a method that calls the same thing that we have for this one, but the other way around. And it's interesting that we are not invoking the other method for the other targets. So maybe so we're clearing. So in other cases, we're clearing the data context explicitly. You can see here that for the ListView on Android, we're using the same method here. So to prepare a container for index, but we're not invoking the clear. We're just removing the data context. It's not what I expected. But let's see if we have another way to find who's invoking that method. So we have the same thing for ListView base. ListView base for iOS. So does iOS have similar? Search for clear. Getting template size, it's not the one. Okay, not used either here. Okay. Let's see, does the Android one search for does a clear as well? So there's no clear either. So it would look like we're preparing but never clearing, or maybe when we're clearing, we're doing it manually for some reason. Or maybe there's something else that we're doing here that I'm not seeing that clears the content. Okay, so what we can do is in here, instead of we can try to reset the data context. So we're going to do it forcefully. currently and see if that helps. So we're going to do the same thing as we can see here. So we're going to clear the value of the container. So the template root clear value. Let's do it forcefully for now. We're going to see where that goes. So we have a container, and we're going to be clearing that container of the data context to see if it actually helps with clearing the memory. If it does not, we're going to take a look at why we're not calling the clear, and if the clear does what it's supposed to do. Maybe it doesn't do what we think it does, so we may have to adjust in that location as well. So if I go back again on the items control, so in the items control, we have the prepare, but do we have the clear? The interesting thing is that the clear is not clearing much. It's clearing the style property, but it's not clearing the data context or anything else that's being set by the prepare. So that means that we're doing what the prepare is doing at another location. So we're setting the content, we're setting all sorts of data context, but that's probably not what's supposed to be doing. So we can see that the content is being set here, but it's not unset. We're setting, I'm sorry, that was the content template. So there's a content property that's being set. I think we're setting it at the top, yeah, here. So we're setting the content here, but we're not resetting the content. That is very curious. So we're setting a binding, and then we're setting a data context somewhere else, I would guess. And we're setting it at that location. If the content control is not as in its own container, so it would be that line that sets the data context. We have a cleanup container, but that one is not called. It's called when update item is called, but only if an items control is used directly and not through ListView. So that means that it may be called at another location. I see that we're calling it from remove all views when we're clearing a virtualizing panel layout on Android, but that's the only location. Okay. So let's see. But have to rebuild properly just to be sure. I think we had the build worked, so that's good. And let's see if we have memory gone down. Okay, we have a question, Azarius. Can we use the official container for Uno, which is great for building apps in CI/CD? Is it possible to create a container that would generate an AOT profile from a repository so we don't have to set up everything locally to get an AOT profile? Well, you could. The problem is that an AOT profile is very highly dependent on what you're using in your app. So for WASM specifically, we're talking. Is it for WebAssembly specifically, or is it for another target? Because if it's for WebAssembly, the profile is very dependent on what you're doing. So it may not be useful to have a generic one. Okay, so we're preparing the item. So let's remove some. And let's clear again. Okay, so it didn't work. And it may be because it's not enough to clear the item that way. Probably need to clear the item deeper than that. Yeah, we still have we still have the data context that is set on the item, so that's not good enough. Okay, so we had a clear method that was available somewhere. I think no, it was content property. Okay, so we're clearing the content property properly when calling cleanup container. So maybe we can try to invoke the cleanup container instead. Let's see if that helps. Cleanup container, so it's items control container. So let's rebuild a little bit. Okay, so only WebAssembly. Okay, so for WebAssembly, yeah, I mean, yeah, it really depends on what your app is doing. So if we were, as you know, to provide you with a generic profile, we would just have a method for the applications that we've built. So it may be a bit faster for you, but not completely. So, I'm curious. So what's the issue about setting up locally for building AOT? There shouldn't be too much to install, and you could probably do it on Gitpod, for instance. That could work as well. So okay, so if it's not the generic profile, what profile would you want to see? Okay, so we have the runtime build again, and we should be good to go very soon. Okay, we have enough. Okay, so let's rebuild and see if we're actually getting into cleanup container. I always forget to bring myself smaller in the list, and I see that I don't have enough light now. It looks like winter in the northern hemisphere is having an impact on my green screen at the back. Okay, so adding this. Okay, so so there we go. So we're in a cleanup container, and we're going to try to see if we're actually cleaning up the content. Okay, so the item is a content. We can see that the item is the actual content, which is good. So we're calling clear container for item override. We know it's not a generated container. Oh, it is a generated container. So generated container is when you make a difference between a ListView item that provides its own template versus that uses one that is provided for it. So it's kind of a tricky situation. So let's say if you have a list of data-bound items for which the items are just plain C# objects, then you bind that, then a container will be generated to host the item that's going to be provided. But you can also, for a ListView, provide ListView items as part of the items that are data-bound. And in that case, the list is not going to be generated on item. It's going to be using the item directly. And that's interesting. Okay, so you're saying something like an nature profile generated on the cloud can read a repository and generate a template. Well, okay, sure, but the thing is that you have to interact with the app to create the profile. So would you want to let's say make a UI test, for instance, and click on the app, and then the file is generated, and then you get the file or something like that? Is that what you want? So we get out of this and we go to clear container clear for item. What do we have in that? Okay, clear for a drag and drop. Okay, so that's the scenario that you want. Okay, I see. Okay, so in an automated way, in a sense that you could generate all this. So the tricky part about this is UI tests UI tests are tricky to maintain. I mean, anytime you change something, then it breaks, and then you have to make sure that your test runs again properly and works properly all the way down. For now, what we found is that when you're about to make a release, you start the app, follow a scenario, whether it's automated using a UI test or not, and then you take the recording and then update the build with this. That's pretty much what you should be doing at that point. I mean, automating would be nice, but I'm not too sure about the value currently, at least, because just because of the fact that UI tests rot very, very easily. But maybe I'm not seeing something there. Okay, so we have that, and then we're clearing the data context property of the content control directly. So that's very nice. Okay, so is it good enough? Is it good enough? Maybe. So we're removing items. Probably drop the breakpoints and see if we're gaining something. Still not. Okay, so we're still having a dependency somewhere where the items being cleared is still having the content as the content stored somewhere. So you can probably just go and figure out where when the cleanup container. So when we're calling cleanup here, we're at the outside. Let's go figure at the outside. So if I remove the content here, if I get out, what do I have in a container? So for instance, if I just drill into the container to see if I have some missing content. Okay, so I have should be having a big list. That's why it's taking a while. Okay, so data context still has the view model. Okay, so that's not good enough. So that one should go, and it does not. So if it does not, that means that for some reason the clearing that we've done is not the right one. Maybe because it's been set in a certain precedence and we're not removing the precedence properly. Because you could see that when we were in a cleanup container, we really were removing content. We were at that location, so we had the content control. And what do we have here? So element. I'm just going to go down directly to that line. So in here, I should be having content control data context. That should be reset to something, but it's not. So if it's not, that means that something is holding onto it. So what we're going to do is try to figure out, I'm going to show you how to drill into the data context or the dependency property system. So we have a store property. Okay, let's go find it manually. I think it's __ store. I always forget about that one. Okay, so there you go. So it's a store. Then we're gonna go and drill into the properties of that control. So we have a map that's available somewhere. We have updated properties on the one. Okay, we have the dependency property details collection. So when we get into that one, we're going to be able to see the context stack for that specific property. So we have entries here. So it's a very large list, but it's mostly empty. But we have all the properties that are available. So it's a sparse list in a sense. And it's built that way for performance. So there's no need to compute the index to get to the property. So I'm surprised that data context is not at the beginning. So I'm probably going to be missing that. So we search for data context. I can take that one. Yeah, that's the one. Okay, so we don't need to get into entries. So that one is a fast track to the existing one. So what we need to go is take a look at the stack, and we can see that. So that is the stack of values. So when you set a dependency property, there's a number of values that are available depending on who's setting what, and you can see here that we have 7 values, and that value that's being set is defined by the dependency property precedence. So if we search for dependency property precedence, property value precedence, we're going to see the levels that are available for that one. So what we can find is that the first one is default value, and then you have default style, then inheritance, then a few others, then local value. And what we can see is that the value has been set as default style, because when you take a look here in the stack, it's set at 6. So if we count 0 is the top level, coercion. And then if we go down 1, 1, 1, then we have local that's supposed to be set here, and then we go down again, and then we go and find the default value that's at the bottom, so the 7th, and we can see that it's not defined properly. So that looks like we're setting the value for the data context properly at the wrong level. Probably because we're sending it through a style, and then we have an override there, and that is a problem. That is a big problem, because we're not setting that value at the right level. So it should likely be set at 2 here, but it's not set properly at that location. So we're definitely missing something. So we should be clearing the value at the right time, but we're definitely not. So that would mean that when we're materializing items, so we can see that when we are in a I think it's prepare container for index. We're setting the items here. And we're setting the data context somewhere in, not in here. I'm not too sure where we're setting it, but it's not set properly. So it would mean that we're setting it incorrectly and at the wrong level. So when we're trying to clear it, it doesn't work. So to test the theory, because we want to test the theory and make sure that we're actually doing it properly, try to figure out why we're setting it at that level. We're going to take the container and we're going to do set value. Not in that project, in the other one. So on set value, we have a way internally to be able to set the precedence at a specific level. So we're going for framework element, data context property, the value, I think we can call clear. Let's call clear value. And we can set the precedence. So the one that we saw was, let me go back to precedences. I think it was default style. So let's go and change the default style and see if the theory proves correct. So what happens when we're building items is that when an item is templated, we kind of override the default precedence for values that are being set to the one that that is automatically provided by the style. So if we're setting the data context property automatically through the materialization of an item, it may end up that we're setting it to the wrong precedence. Then when we're outside of setting a style, then we're clearing the value at the wrong level, so it stays. So we clear the value, but it's still the wrong value. So we're going to try to find where we're doing this, and maybe we can change the location of that application. We're going to try to find that by going into the creation of the materialization of the items one by one, and just drill into the location where we're actually setting the data context, and change that. Okay, so we have it. And we're going to see if we actually do the clear, if we now have the right value being removed, and if we're actually clearing the memory now. So it's actually a bit more complex than I anticipated. I wasn't expecting that we were not clearing the items properly, and that's going to help for memory management for sure. So let's add a few items. Now let's clear, and let's see if we actually clear the items properly. So we can set, if we search for data context here for container, okay, so we didn't clear the value at the right level, it seems. Did I read the list incorrectly? Maybe. May very well be that I read the value incorrectly. So let's try to see how what we're doing in the clear value. It may definitely well be that we're not modifying the right one. Okay, so we're setting the value here. Actual instance not useful. Okay, so we have the property detail that we had before. So if we take a look inside, we should be able to see the stack. It's set at 6. So maybe I'm wrong in terms of the way we interpreted the stack but previously, and maybe it's the wrong one. So previous precedence is inheritance. Okay, so it's different. I read it completely differently. So maybe, okay, that's curious. So let's go back to the list here for what precedence means. Did I read it? I probably read it the wrong way. So inheritance. Oh, that default value was not set, so it's offset by 1. Okay, so that changes things a bit. Because if it's inheritance, that means that the value has been set by the parent and inherited and not cleared properly. And that would mean that the parent has been set but not removed properly, or that the data context is incorrectly set for some reason. So that's very interesting. So now it changes the way we search at the issue. So let's get out of this one. So we have cleared the item here. Now what we can look for is determine what's the parent of the item to determine how it got the inherited data context. Okay, so we can see here that the item still has a parent for that is the item stack panel. And because it's not removed from the item stack panel, then it continues to get the data context from there. But does the parent have a data context? Maybe not. Okay, so it does not contain the definition. So let's drill into the parent manually to see what we have. Data context. Okay, so it has list test view model. And is that the one that we had that has the memory? No, it's not the one that has the memory issue. So it's inheritance. That makes sense. But the memory is held onto by the items. Okay, so that's not the right one. So we're looking at the wrong thing. Okay, so we have a data context, which is the right value because it's inherited from the parent, which is the right one, because we're recycling items, but they're still associated to the item stack panel, which is correct. Now, what we don't know is why item is still being kept. So container is a content control, so it has a content property. So we're going to try to drill into the content property of the content control to see if we have an item there. Okay, so we still have the content that's being set here. It looks correct. It looks correct. Okay, so if it's not that, there are still 2 items in the list because we added 2, so that's fine. That's very interesting. It's a very different issue from what I expected. So if we remove all the items, we're still not going down. We still have the item that is held onto by something. So it's definitely something else that's holding onto it. And we didn't find it. So let's try to make another snapshot heap snapshot to see if we can find something different from the previous run, because now we've cleared the items. If it helped, so maybe it's something else now that is holding onto the performance, the memory. So Azarias is asking, is it possible to create apps using fully programmatic approach instead of writing XAML? So it's of course, it's definitely possible. You can write items one by one if you want, using plain C#. And technically, when you take a look at the XAML reader, that's exactly what it does. It takes an XML version of your representation of the UI, and then it creates items one by one by using the new APIs and set properties and things like that. So everything that you can do inside of the XAML reader, to some extent, you can do by code explicitly. So yeah, it's definitely possible. So if we add items and we remove the items, do a bit of GC and snapshot, then stop. We can take a look again at who's holding on to our items models here, and we can see that, oh, the list is a lot shorter than it used to be. That's a lot better. That's a lot better. Would there be any performance difference? Not really, no. There would not be any difference, because the XAML generator is pretty much doing what you're doing. So there may be a little bit less code, but depending on the scenarios that you're doing, the XAML generator is doing some things that are more optimized. So not necessarily, no. Okay, so we have a serial disposable, a dependency object store here. We have an immutable list. So the items presenter is holding on to a disposable. So it looks like the items presenter, for some reason, is keeping a reference to our object. Stack panel is also holding onto it. But through the dependency object store as well. So there's definitely something in ListView item that's holding onto the item, and it looks like it's set immediately at the immediately below. So it's set in some property, so we're gonna have to find which one. I would have thought that it's data context, but it definitely looks like it's not. So we're holding onto something. When we see a ListView item and directly in the dependency object store, you can see the details contains the item. That means that that the item's available right away. So it's definitely stored in the ListView item somewhere. So we're probably missing something. So let's find that again. I'm gonna not the right project. So we add an item or a few items, and then we remove one. Okay, so let's go back to our recycle view. So our container here is a ListView item. So when we're supposed to have been cleared its content completely, we're supposed to not be having any reference to item through one of the properties. So we can see that the item here, the data context, is not containing anything, but for some reason it's getting access to containing that property. So we're gonna have to figure which one contains that value. So we're gonna go back to the store. And we're going to drill into some of the properties to find which one has something that it shouldn't have. So we're talking about the properties. Properties field. And we have entries, and then we're going to drill into the entries to find out which one has what. Because we know it's not data context. We have composite, we have access key, cache mode, so those are not holding onto it. Let's go again to see if the data context doesn't have it, just in case. Okay, so we still have the ListView item here, and the ListView item doesn't contain anything with the items. There's no item selected either, and there's only one of them, so it's not that. So maybe it's set on something else. So we have the templated parent. It's not supposed to contain anything important here. We have a manage weak reference to ListView, which is fine. What else do we have? So data context, we know it doesn't give anything. Maybe there's something else. template. Template is a template, does not give anything. So all of this is empty. We have content. So maybe content is not reset and should be. So what do we have in content? We have ListView item model, which is the top level one, so not the one that has the issue. And there isn't any other value that's available that contains that list here. So we have data template here, not the one that is causing issue. We have the visual state manager. Okay, you have is selected, and that's it. Okay, so none of the issues, none of the content here has what we're looking for. So it may be stored somewhere else, but I don't see where. Or maybe we're not looking at the right items. Also, could be a different one that contains the list and it's not clear properly. But what do we have? What else do we have? That is very curious. That is very, very curious. Let's try to see if we can find it from somewhere else. We have 4 items that are stored in dependency property details collection that are held onto directly from the list view item. Let's see. We can try something else. So we can try to use the facility of the debugger and see if we can search using that. So it's a feature that is only available on the full runtime. The mono runtime doesn't have that, but we can see if we can find something interesting in there. Okay, so if we search for the item here, we're going to mark that instance and try to search it in the list. So this, and we're going to be making an object ID of it. So it's number 1. And then when we remove the item, we're going to search for it for that instance afterwards here. Okay, so I think I can search for this. Does it work? It's going to take a while because there's a lot of stuff to search for, but we'll see. Maybe we can find something. So it's searching 3 levels down. So there are lots of properties that the debugger he needs to poke through to get there. Okay, so would it be possible to create a Flutter-like building experience? Most likely, yes. And stay tuned for this. I won't say much, but stay tuned. So still searching. Can we get to something interesting? Otherwise, if it's still stored there, so we have something better because the list now is with the graph of dependencies is actually a lot smaller than it used to be, which is good, but it's not good enough because we're still keeping the data context set to the item, so that's not good enough. Okay, so it's very slow. It's very slow. It's not unexpected, but it's very slow. Okay, so and we can't cancel it, so that's not fun. Okay, so let's try it again. Where should we search for that? Because if it's not directly there, how can we search for that one? Maybe I'm gonna scope the search to a smaller set. So we're searching searching for something else. Okay, so let's add it in there. So I'm gonna mark it again. There we go. Remove. Okay, so I'm gonna be removing all of the others and search for, still search for one. I'm gonna search for 2 levels down instead of too much. No match is found. Okay, so maybe I don't find it here. Okay, so if it's not there, maybe there's something else that we don't see. Because sometimes it's about values being updated, so maybe it's stored in something else. But it's supposed to be in the, if we took a look at the snapshot, it's supposed to be in dependency property details. So dependency property details that we're inside. Dependency property details. That's in properties. And that's one dependency property detail. So there's one property that holds onto it, but we didn't find it before. So maybe there's another cache somewhere that holds the value somewhere. There's no entries here. There's a hard owner reference here, but it's not supposed to be having an impact. It's not a dependency property. It's not in that it's not a default value. It's not. Oh, there you go. Fast local value. Oh, that's interesting. Found it. Okay, so it's stored here in the fast local value in a non. Oh, it's a pretty deep issue there. So it's stored in a fast local value, and we're keeping the value as not, we're not clearing it for some reason. That's very interesting. Okay, so let's go take a look quickly at what that one does. Fast local value, what is it? Fast local value, no. Why don't I find it? Fast local, no, not there. Okay. So it's in dependency property details. I have a fast. Okay, there it is. Fast local value. Okay, so we have a set value fast, and it is supposed to be an object, and for some reason it's not reset. Why would it not be reset? Okay, so we're setting the value. If the stack is empty, that's interesting. So we set the value fast, and then the stack was removed. And because the stack was materialized, oh, it's probably because we're getting it from. That's interesting. Okay, so that may be because we're reading it. So so we can see here that the property here is red. It's materializing the content because we're reading it. That's interesting. Okay. So it's a local value. But are we observing a transient issue? It could be. So what I can see here is that we're not removing the local value for some reason. because when we're materializing the content, it's supposed to be. Wait, why is the search not working properly here? Oh, fast local value. Okay, so it's fast local value. It only works when we're setting the value differently. If stack is empty, but we're not resetting the value when we are materializing the stack. So that's interesting. Okay. Okay, so we should be resetting that value. Let's try it. So that's definitely something that doesn't work here, and it's leaking if we're materializing something. So let's see if it helps. If using equals null, not be better to use is null. Yes. So one of the reason it's that way is because we didn't have that code is pretty ancient, and we didn't have the is null syntax at the time. So yes, it may be very useful to change it now. So did we change anything here? That's interesting. Rebuild completely. Should have been. But in that context specifically, it's just an object array. So the equality operator is not overridden for that one specifically, so it won't change that much. But yes, that's fair. The is null is more interesting in most cases. So that code is quite old, and it's interesting that that bug was still there after all this time. So it's definitely something that we're gonna have to figure out, because we're definitely changing something here that that was supposed to be validated. So we're probably having a hole in the memory validation of all this. Okay, so we still have the app running here. So we have to stop it, otherwise we can't override it. We're glad to have you on board. That's very nice. Okay, so that specific issue is interesting, because we were using this to be able to not. So let's say that specific part is when we have a dependency property for which you set the local value, and most of the time that's something that happens. You set the local value and that's it. There's nothing else that happens in there. And what that does is that it prevents from having to create the whole stack of values that may be providing the full set of features for the dependency object. But in doing this, it kind of introduced a memory leak, because that value is not was not reset properly, and my hope is that it will fix it. So what was supposed to be a very small memory leak actually ended up being a very very deep one. So let's see. Let's see if we have memory that is collected now. So adding content. Come on, debugger. So let's remove that one. Talk about finding an anaconda looking inside a wormhole. Yes, that's definitely something like that. I like the analogy. Okay, so adding items, removing items. And we clear. Still not clearing. Okay, so we're still having an issue. There may be an additional memory leak that stays there. So I have a few more minutes. We're just going to start again a snapshot and see if we can find something else now that keeps memory alive. So we're at the third memory leak. That's interesting. Let's add a bit more. Okay, so we take a snapshot and stop the collection again and see what we can find. So in the, not the right one. We're talking about this item. Okay, so in dependency property details, it's still here. Oh, that's a lot less. Okay, so now it's held onto by solid color brush. That is very odd. That is very odd. Okay, so we have layout state. Okay, so definitely looks like a an interesting chain of leaks. Maybe we're storing. Looks like we're storing that property change somewhere, but that's definitely not good. Okay, we have a border, a list of UI elements, grid. Okay, so the grid is maintaining it, but for some reason we're holding on to it on a solid color brush. So what's interesting is that it may be looking like we propagated the item, the data context down to a specialized dictionary, and that one is a problem because that is always hooked onto something that's generic. So that is very interesting. Okay, so that will be for next week, definitely, or before, because it looks like it's a bit more serious than I thought. Because having the dependency, the data context that goes down to solid color brush without being removed, that sounds problematic. So we're gonna have to figure this one out. Well, that was an interesting session. So I hope you learned a bunch because it's interesting. I dug a very deep. It's very deep, so it's going to be interesting to find out what the actual culprit is. So until next week, happy coding, and see you next time. Bye for now.